Millions lost over a single flight. I was doing some HR training at work today, and the HR rep told a story which was given as an example of one of the consequences of poor customer service. When my coworker was going to be married, the wedding was out of state, as to be closer to his and the bride's families. One of the friends who was going to be in attendance had to fly coast to coast across the US in order to attend. The day of the wedding, his flight was canceled, and the airline refused to rebook him a flight in time. And on top of that, they were not at all kind or hospitable. As a result, he missed his good friend's wedding, and this pissed him off. What the airline didn't know was that this particular person worked as a travel agent. His job was to book commercial flights for large groups. This airline was one of the bigger international airlines based in the US, and someone he would normally consider when booking flights. However, after this airline refused to rebook his canceled flight and caused him to miss his best friend's wedding, he refused to even consider them as an option for his clients. He was so pissed off by the airline's customer service that he even kept track of how many times he could have booked a flight with them, but instead chose another, perhaps even more expensive option. Over the next couple of years, he cost the airline over $2 million in lost revenue because they were rude to him and refused to rebook his flight, causing him to miss a friend's wedding. This sounds kind of like one of those stories that a boss will just tell a new employee just to kind of scare him straight into doing the right thing. I'm not saying OP is making up any of this, but it might have just been a fake story told to him. That being said, it also could be real, so not gonna judge. Don't mess with real big Toby. It's been long enough, and I doubt they're gonna come after me, so here goes. I adopted a full-bred husky in the Pacific Northwest. We named him Toby, but after a while he developed the name Real Big Toby. He wasn't a huge husky or Malamute, but boy did he look beautiful, and boy was his personality real big. He had one blue eye and one brown eye, which never failed to trip people out. On top of that, he was a huge ham, loved attention, and would actually talk to you about how his day was going. It got to the point where it was kinda stupid to put him on a leash. I would tell him to stay, when I went to class for example, and he'd be passed out or getting the chicks to scratch his belly when I came out. Every time. The dean of the college even knew him on a first-name basis, and started to bring his dog into work after watching Real Big Toby do his thing. At the time, I lived in a mountain town, attended college, and was an avid mountain biker, so having a dog that would happily and easily do 30 miles in a day was cool. He would follow us everywhere we went. My mountain bike was my only source of transportation, so we became very in tune with one another. He was a husky after all, so you could tell when he ran that this was exactly what he was born to do. Toby was such a super good boy. He listened, paid attention, and never left my side. He had a seat designated for him on the desk at the local coffee shop, which meant you had to walk by him and try to resist giving him a scratch if you wanted to go inside. It got to the point where just about everyone in this fairly small town got to know Toby on a first-name basis. Every once in a while on mountain bike runs, we would get separated, or Toby would just get sidetracked on the way down the hill. It was such a small town that, in the few times it happened, he was back with me by the end of the day. The police all knew him from around town. The pound knew him, so if anybody called, they'd just give them my number. One day it happened. He got lost on his way down the hill. Only this time, he didn't come back. No call, nothing. For days. It got to the point where I started asking around town. If you ever lived in a small town, you know it's hard to keep a secret. After about a week, a friend says he saw Toby and tracked the guy down and gave him my number. He never called. After searching, trying to find this guy, I finally got a breakthrough. He worked at the college. Now, I'm aware how stupid people can be when they receive an animal. Toby was ripped. You could see his muscles bulging out of his fur. He didn't have an ounce of fat on him because, you guessed it, He was in excellent shape. I fed him mostly a raw diet, and what kibble he did get was the best you could buy. The first thing out of this guy's mouth was to tell me that he's keeping my dog. "You don't take care of him. You don't even feed him, and he's such a good dog. He'll be better off with me," he said. I became enraged. Well, like I mentioned, he worked at the school I attended. I also mentioned the dean hammed it up with Toby on a nearly daily basis. I didn't mention that I had the dean's home number though. So, a call Saturday morning resulted in Toby being returned to me later that day. This guy had the nerve to, along with Toby, bring me a 50-pound bag of the crappiest store brand of dog food you could buy. "I bought you this so you could feed him." Rage. Come to find out, this guy was in charge of a research project for the school. It was very easy to figure out where his office was. I went to his office with a plan of returning his food and chewing him out in front of his colleagues. He wasn't at his desk, so I did the most natural thing I could possibly do. I turned the 50-pound bag of dog food upside down on his desk. Computer, stacks of paper to the point where it formed a perfect mountain on top of his keyboard. Truly an awesome sight. Knowing loose lips sink ships, I didn't tell anyone but my close friends. The school brought misconduct charges against me. The hearing was in front of a board of other students and staff as well. I don't know what happened to the bag of dog food. I was telling the story to a bunch of guys and one of them asked me for the bag. That's the last I saw of it. All charges were dropped. The a-hole that tried to steal Real Big Toby had it much, much worse. 50 effing pounds of dog food on top of your research project. As it turns out, doesn't bode well with management. For reasons unknown, 2 days later he was fired from the college. Not only did they fire him, but put a restraining order on him and had to change the locks to the building. Don't mess with Real Big Toby. When you steal someone's dog, you are taking away a member of their family. I really, truly do believe that if you steal someone's dog, you should be charged with kidnapping. If you think someone just has the most beautiful German Shepherd, Husky, Poodle, whatever type of dog, go out and buy your own type of that dog. Don't take theirs. Thanks for the sidewalk. My friend ran his own masonry business for many years. When he retired, he turned the business over to his son and moved to a smaller house in a different town. About a year later, the town announced a plan to install sidewalks on his street and solicit bids for the job. His son submitted a bid. The supervisor of public works rejected it. He claimed that since property owners would eventually pay for the work via a special assignment, his participation was a conflict of interest. The winning bid was significantly higher than his son's. He did some research and found out they were in the middle of a 10-year plan to install sidewalks throughout the town. All the contractors were awarded the same 3-year contracts on what appeared to be a rotating schedule. To an impartial observer, it might look like the contractors were taking turns submitting the low bid. But of course, that would be illegal. There wasn't really anything he can do. Collusion and price fixing are very hard to prove. When work commenced, he kept an eye on the progress. At first, it was just professional curiosity, but he saw corners that were being cut, so he started photographing the work. When he saw, for example, that the amount of slab base was less than required by code, or the concrete was too thin, he reported it to the contractor and the town. They said that he must be mistaken since the building inspector was on top of things. But for the duration of the project, he didn't see the inspector once. Who knows, maybe he does his inspections at night. Then things got nasty. The cement truck accidentally drove across his lawn and wiped out his wife's rose bushes. Another time, a truck accidentally took out his mailbox. Evidently, the building inspector signed off on the job because the contractor was paid and the town sent out the assessment notices. His came to more than $6,000. He hired a licensed engineer who inspected the work and found numerous deviations from the spec. His attorney appealed the assessment, citing the engineer's report, the photographs, and a record of all the complaints he filed. His neighbors also appealed their assessments. The town had no choice but to suspend the assessments while the matter was investigated. They sued the contractor and put the rest of the sidewalk plan on hold. The supervisor of public works and the building inspector suddenly resigned. 3 years later, the sidewalk is still there, although it has sagged and cracked just where he predicted. He and his neighbors haven't paid a dime. Man, that's a mafia level crap right there. I just imagine like a group of guys sitting outside their house at night with baseball bats and cement mixing overalls. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, consider subscribing. And if you really liked it, maybe give it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I'll see you again in the next one. Peace out.